Reality is bigotry. I want to thank my friend Emmett in Nashville for that phrase. It was something he posted a few years back, and it so perfectly captures what the left is up to that I've been borrowing it ever since. A couple of weeks ago, a friend linked me to a story from Scotland. A 17-year-old student refused to accept that there are now more than two genders and was tossed out of class for it. In the video, his teacher says that there are national rules that force schools and students to affirm whatever gender variant some kid claims. Is there any question at all which side of the political spectrum is doing this? Willfully moving children away from the two-gender system which has served us since the dawn of time? The system not designed by us, but by God or nature? This is the same fight that set Jordan Peterson on his way to international acclaim. Professor Peterson had been told that unless he actively affirmed a claim to a gender variant he sees no basis for believing in, he was exhibiting hateful behavior, non-inclusive behavior. Reality, in the eyes of the Canadian left as well as the Scottish left, is bigotry. Same goes for the American left. It's not that these people are ignorant of human nature. It's that they stand in direct opposition to human nature. They don't want there to be intrinsic features in people because they are in love with their own stated mission to fundamentally transform people. Lately, they are in love with the insane notion that a man can be converted into a woman or a woman into a man, and they will tolerate no resistance. Their philosophy, if you can call it a philosophy, is collectivism. They desire unanimity of action. As I've said before, collective action requires collective opinion. If the entire mass of humanity is to move in whatever direction the hive mind demands, then the people refusing to go along must be silenced. The left has really only one strategy for this: shame. Their ideas are so weak, their policies so disastrous, that they cannot persuade with explanations and examples. I mean, we have the whole of the left turning towards socialism, even as the fruit of a regime they fully supported rots on the ground in Venezuela. There is a giant warning light flashing red only about 3,600 miles from where I sit, and California is pushing harder than ever for socialism. Try to make that case with logic and examples. It can't be done. So their job is to slander every opponent of their agenda with claims of some sort of bigotry. If you're against socialism, you are a greedy racist who wants poor people dead. This is what passes for an argument on the hard left. If you listen at all to MSNBC or Democracy Now! Or any of the hard left media, every discussion about Donald Trump starts with assumptions about the man that are entirely unrelated to fact. He is assumed to be a racist, though no evidence exists of a racist deed on his part. He is assumed to be anti-gay, even though he has repeatedly reached out to the gays in his audience to be sure that they know they are welcome, and has insisted that all countries protect gay rights. He is assumed to be sexist, even though he clearly adores women and has put many of them in high-trust, high-salary positions. The left must use their primary weapon against this man because he threatens their whole anti-reality agenda. Everything about the president just screams human nature. He boasts like men do when they compete. He is drawn to beautiful women like every normal man is. He fights back when attacked like men have done everywhere that humans have survived. He spent his career atop a corporation of which he is the authority figure, like every tribal chieftain ever did since the dawn of time. Trump is a living example of the patriarchy that is natural to our species. How many times have we seen perfectly decent people forced into an apology to save their career? Trump doesn't apologize for what he hasn't done, period. And they've been out to destroy him from day one. He's a constant reminder of reality. So the anti-reality left has no choice but to hit him with unrelenting charges of bigotry. Why is this their preferred strategy? Because the left patterns themselves after civil rights leaders. Though they did not lead that movement, though it was their party who made Jim Crow and fought hardest to keep it, though their insistence that blacks be forever coddled by victim thinking makes them the primary impediment to progress for that group, still, they continue to claim a civil rights lineage. Their modern gods are Mandela and King and Parks, etc. At least that's what they claim. Every thinking American understands that the civil rights struggle was one of the least morally ambiguous chapters in our history. It was a clear-cut struggle between right and wrong. Because nobody can argue against civil rights, the left seized that flag for themselves and have been using it to intimidate ever since. They figure that as long as they keep pointing fingers at people and calling them racists or sexists or homophobes or Islamophobes, nobody will have the guts to push back. And it's been very effective. This is the thrust of college indoctrination: to attach a charge of bigotry to everybody who challenges their battle plans. They understand that college students these days are still functionally children. They know that a million Sesame Street admonitions against unfairness are still echoing around in their partially formed brains. The American left seeks to hijack that early programming, give it a twist toward aggression, and lock it down as a lifelong internal doctrine. Because the civil rights movement is their standard of righteousness, bigotry is their standard of evil. If a charge of bigotry can be made to stick, the victim of that slander is immediately removed from the game board. When James Damore, a Google engineer, published a memo that used current science to explain why women and men are attracted to different jobs within the tech giant, he was immediately charged with sexism. Though his thinking was not remotely anti-woman and was backed by peer-reviewed studies, he was fired and his influence eliminated. Like Lawrence Summers before him, Damore dared to suggest that women were interested in segments of the working world more involved with people than with things, that engineering is just not as fascinating to as many women as men. 50 years ago, that would have been considered common sense. Damore would have been called Captain Obvious. But Google would not stand for such thinking, however well documented. They stood up to denounce Damore. They held him out as an example lest anybody else get the idea that they could present evidence refuting the feminist agenda and the oppression orthodoxy. Google might as well have put Damore in punishment stocks in the courtyard under a banner reading, "Reality is bigotry." The good news is that it's not working anymore. As I was pulling away from my Democrat friends half a decade ago, I was called a racist literally hundreds of times, even when I was engaged in one of my twice-yearly campaigns to send resources to families in the developing world. Nobody thought I was racist. They were slandering me to shut me up. When I pushed back against the Me Too hysteria with logical arguments, people who knew better tried to paint me as a misogynist. I had begun to be an effective voice against their control freak demands. They couldn't prove me wrong, so they called me a bigot. You've seen this meme. The definition of racist: a person who wins an argument with a liberal. Right. Though I think we now have to separate real liberals from their progressive masters, the meme is popular for good reason. Of course there are some racists in the world. Humans are tribal and some humans are stupid. There will always be those who judge people by race, gender, or sexual orientation. Like progressives do. But for the most part, bigotry is the least of our worries. We are far more likely to be hurt by an accusation of bigotry than to be hurt by bigotry itself. And as the left continues to drown in its own accusation culture, more and more people will quietly vote against them. I refer again to Jordan Peterson as proof. He speaks to packed houses all over the English-speaking world. His books are being translated into many languages, and not because his ideas are radical, but because they are built on traditional wisdom. His growing fame and influence are a direct result of the left trying to silence him. I don't put blue-collar logic in his league necessarily, but we are here because the left pushed us into a corner. Their attempts to silence us have just made our voices louder. That's what happens when accusers are exposed as liars. This too will pass. The pendulum will swing the other way and truth will come back into style. Reality has a way of asserting itself no matter how hard one tries to deny it. So when you find yourself online arguing calmly with somebody and suddenly that person calls you a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or a transphobe or an ableist or an Islamophobe, just hit the all caps button, cue up a few exclamation points and type this phrase, "Reality is bigotry," and then go your merry way knowing that you have won the debate. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.